Good morning, everybody. We apologize for the delay in the start of the meeting. We had some technical difficulties in getting our audio-visual equipment all synced together, and it appears now that we are able to let everybody in and at the same time record the meeting so that we have full participation. Jasmine, I'd like to bring the Dutchess County IDA meeting to order for April. Jasmine, would you please take roll call for attendance? Here.
Mark Doyle.
Yeah.
Kathy Bowers. Here.
Here.
Richard Houston.
Here.
Tom McCown.
Here.
James.
Here.
Okay, I want to remind everybody about our conflict of interest policy. If there's anybody that has a known conflict with any of the items on the agenda, I would ask that they please state so. Does anybody have any conflict? Kathy?
I do with Bill Parso. I have a business relationship with them through my employer.
Okay. And I also, and that would be for item C on the new business. Okay. I have a conflict with both item A and item C today because the firm that I'm the chairman of the board of has insurance relationship with both of those projects. So I will be recusing myself from them, and Mark will be running the meeting at that point. And we will still have a quorum on both items, so we can continue.
I also have a conflict with A.
With A?
Yes,
Okay.
my firm did the engineering for the project.
Okay, so that's 2 on A and 2 on, so we're still good. Okay. Can someone confirm that the meeting notice was posted for me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any bills and communications from the staff? Okay, a couple of items I wanted to mention under bills and communications. One of them is that Kathy has advised me and the staff and the legislature that when her term expires at the end of May,
June 1st.
June 1st, that she will not be continuing, due to other priorities and obligations. And so she's going to be greatly missed as the lead for our finance and audit committees. And so we have asked the legislature to consider a new member, and we've asked that they consider someone with a similar background that could possibly help us. So again, Kathy, we appreciate your service, and I'm sure we will recognize that further, but you will definitely be missed. The other thing I wanted to make mention of is at a few meetings ago, we had a discussion about whether one of the letter writers for public hearings had commented that projects could come back after they were given pilots and renegotiate their pilots, appeal their tax basis. And I'd asked Sarah to report to the board if that had been the case, and she gave us information. But a letter writer had said that they had researched and found 2 or 3 other situations where they felt that that people that had received benefits had appealed their valuations. And I asked Sarah to look into that, and it actually turned out that they had not had pilots. They only had sales tax exemptions. So the ones that party referred to actually were not additional appeals. So I know that sounds sort of vague, but I just wanted to respond to the letter writer. Okay. We have some minutes to approve. We have the March 12th meeting minutes, and I just wanted to make sure, did anybody have any corrections or modifications to the minutes? Okay, if not, could I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we've got Amy made the motion and Mark seconded. Jasmine, will you just take a roll call vote for the approval of minutes?
Mark Doyle.
Approved.
Kathy Bowers.
Approved.
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 Approved. Tom McCown. James.
Approved.
Approved. Okay, report of the treasurer. Dave.
For the IDA as of March 31st, 2025, we have 2.7 million in cash. The receivables remain the same. Down below the accounts payable, we have one pilot that we received and we still have to disperse. That's for Hyde Park Fire. Looking at the P&L, we have 66,000 in revenue before the pilots to a budget of 309,000. So far, we're unfavorable to budget by 244,000. We have expenditures of 226,000 to a budget of 747,000. So far we're favorable by 521,000. We have a net loss of 161,000 to a budgeted net loss of 438,000. So far we're favorable by 278,000. Again, the revenue, as well. Any
And
questions?
for our newer members, we do not have to vote to approve the treasurer's reports each time. It's just for our information. Okay, are there any committee reports that we need to have? Okay, I don't believe there's any unfinished business. New business, as I mentioned before, the first item is for Jackson Crossing, and I do have a conflict of interest through an insurance relationship. So I'm going to ask Mark to run that part of the meeting, and so I guess we will. Are there representatives here present in the waiting room? I can go see, but if not, Mark, you're in charge.
Just waiting to see if the representatives outside are in. Morning. Morning. Well, let's see. Kathy's out, but I think at the end we'll be just fine if you don't mind. Sorry that.
No worries.
I'm sorry. Let's see if we can get some chairs for you guys.
I'm fine standing.
I'm fine standing.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's fine.
No. Yep. Thank you for sending us.
All right. Well, good morning. So the last time you were in front of us presented, but a good amount of time has gone by. We have new members, and I think it'd be good to refresh our memories and bring us up to date with interactions, public
Sure.
hearings, and
Very well. I'm Kelly Leibold with KARC Planning Consultants. This is Amy Ardrakis with KARC, and I think everyone knows Steve Tinkleman. This project did receive a preliminary approval from the IDA. This is located in the village of Fishkill.
Stop for a second. Steve, how are you involved with the project? Because I'm already recusing myself for your built parcels, so I do have a business relationship with Steve through my business. He's principal. Okay, I'm gonna have to recuse myself also for this one. Okay, thank you.
So, do we now have a quorum?
You want me to move?
Maybe.
So that's my question. Is our vote based on people present in the room, or is it based on a constituted board? People in the room, so
We're it.
got it. But a quorum, it's not, it's the majority of the voting people in the room.
Yes. You and certainly.
Over on the other end?
In a forum of all the.
But to approve the project, just approve the project, is it a majority of the vote in the room, or is it a constituted board? So you would need all four votes positive. Okay. Just trying to understand.
You want to sit them out?
No, I think we're fine.
The entire board doesn't.
No, I know. We're having.
Oh, no, we're fine. I'm sorry. We're just talking about quorum and voting.
So the result being that we are capable of voting and we have a quorum. And so we can continue on. You need a majority of the full board.
My question was just for voting purposes, would it be to approve or disapprove, would it be a 3-to-1 or a 4, all 4 needed to vote in favor or in disfavor, just because of the all 4? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, okay, and so we would need all 4. Fine. Very good. Now, so for Tom, this is the first time that you're hearing, well, not hearing about it because you've seen the documentation, So let's get back to where
Okay.
you were.
Again, so Kelly Leibold with KRC Planning Consultants. So I represent the applicant for their permitting process and assisting with the IDA. This project is located in the village of Fishkill. It went through a very long permitting process, multifamily apartment complex, a series of 1 and 2 bedroom buildings with amenities. There's office space and so forth for the residents of the facility. We applied to the IDA for a non-deviated pilot, so a standard pilot, sales tax exemption and mortgage tax exemption. Obviously, since that time, things have become economically a little bit more challenging for construction. We're not sure where we're going to be with these tariffs and so forth, but we are certainly proceeding with the construction of the project. There was a whole series of DOT permitting and other outside agency permitting that's complete. We completed all of our DOT pre-construction process and really are ready to start construction over there, notwithstanding the review of the IDA. There was a public hearing that was held in the village of Fishkill. I was present at the public hearing. I've reviewed the transcripts. I would say that 92 to 95% of the comments that were raised at the public hearing pertain to permitting and planning issues and seeker-related issues that occurred at the local level. There were a few comments that related to the IDA, mostly the lack of affordable housing, which we had explained. The village of Fishkill doesn't support affordable housing in this particular zoning district. There were concerns about the number of jobs being created, and I think that we've certainly explained the jobs that would be created as part of this process. I think it was something like 152 construction jobs, 2.5 immediate jobs, predominantly leasing and management. There's always the ancillary jobs that are created with property maintenance, landscaping, plowing and so forth. And of course, the overall construction. We did provide you with an analysis of the total cost of the project. This is about a $25 million project. The IDA assistance is sales tax exemption is around $837,000. I'm not giving you the details. Mortgage tax is $145,000. And so with respect to the pilot, again, a non-deviated pilot, the taxes without the pilot are estimated at 3.3 million. With the pilot, it's 2.5 million. And so the foregone revenue is 780,000. So it's not a significant pilot request. Again, this is a non-deviated pilot. We provided you with a Des Moines report and that it was well justified as far as the projected cash on cash revenue. The taxes, if this project were not to proceed, so this is certainly meets the before test, is 430,000. So without this project, this parcel would generate 430,000 in taxes. Of course, special districts are exempt. I know there was some comments that were raised at public hearing that fire and emergency services would be affected, but of course we all know that special districts are exempt from the pilot. That's hopefully a summary. I can answer any questions if the board has them.
Very good. So open the floor to questions.
I don't necessarily have questions as much as, you know, comments to the board about, I obviously read the documents and certainly read the transcript from the public hearing that we got late last night or late yesterday afternoon. And I guess some of the concerns raised are, to me, are valid concerns. And I'm just wondering, as a board, I don't have enough historical knowledge, just being, you know, new 6 months on this board, to understand how projects are vetted and actually why this have even been brought to us. It seems like it's not a standard application that would be accepted by the IDA.
That's a good, I think that looking at the basics of what we're doing with respect to this as a test, you know, a test study is a pretty good thing to do. So we can go through that to some extent with your help, Ron. And because we do have, we have to meet a number of tests. We have to meet firstly, the test that it is, a business as opposed to, so that it's an eligible applicant, and clearly it is, it's being through our process, and the distinction between, with regard to residential properties, is that, are they rentals or ownership properties? In this case, it's 100% rental.
Correct.
I do have, so being new myself on that, I wasn't here for your case presentation. I have questions about, you mentioned that Fishville does not require an affordable housing component.
Correct.
Could you explain that? I don't.
Some municipalities, they actually have in their zoning, they have an affordable housing component, and there isn't one in this particular area. And if you read the Dutchess County planning report, so we always fall back on the housing report that's prepared by the county. This particular municipality actually has a need for non-affordable housing, so for market rate housing. It's one of the things that's identified in there, that there was more than sufficient, there wasn't a need for affordable housing. So this particular project didn't have that component to it.
The county as a whole.
As a whole, it does, but it also breaks down, if you read the report, I'm happy to send it over. It actually talks about certain municipalities, and it will go over different types of housing that are needed in each municipality.
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome.
You mentioned 152 construction jobs. How many of those construction jobs do you anticipate will pay local area prevailing wages?
So that, it's not yet to be determined, up here, I know they were in that kind of the union versus the non-union area. And so it's dependent upon the contracts that are.
Regardless of union or non-union, prevailing wage in this area.
Sure.
And all workers in this area should, in my opinion, should earn prevailing wage regardless of union status.
So at the
But I just out of curiosity, how many of these jobs do you anticipate, regardless of union status? How many of you think?
I can't answer that. Yeah, I just don't know until the contracts are awarded. Until those are awarded, we're unable to answer that.
Given the, given the scale of the project, we are required, there's a certain percentage of local construction.
Right.
So, that's a requirement.
That's correct, but also, but there's no wage requirement. I'm just asking, this is outside of the requirements. How many would you?
At this point, as Scully was saying, we don't know yet. The job hasn't been bought out from, you want the qualified people because it's by the nature of the construction here, you need people that are skilled.
Right.
And so that usually goes hand in hand.
Yes.
I just want to provide some clarity, but I also want to make it clear, I work for Dutchess County government, as you guys know. I work on the strategy for economic development, so I'm not a member of this board or the IDA or the LDC administration. So I am speaking from the outside, but just to provide some clarity to your question, I can't answer that. The executive director who would have accepted the application and worked through the eligibility process is not here right now.
Right.
She's resigned. So I can't answer that for you, but it usually is vetted by the executive director who's eligibility. And this project is not unlike some other projects that we've seen. As it relates to the local workforce, well, first the housing, the county did a housing needs assessment in 2022 and identified that we need housing across the board. Individuals who are homeless to actually market and luxury, if you will. But we have a crisis. We need additional housing in our area. This is inclusionary zoning or zoning that requires set-asides for housing projects has been done across the country for many, many years. It's a little new to us. And I think this housing needs assessment has done the conversation about zoning and requiring some set aside for affordability. The county is trying to incentivize that through a housing trust fund. We'll be bringing an idea concept to this board for future housing projects where we could get we could negotiate for affordable units or workforce units in exchange for the benefits. On the wages, there is no prevailing wage requirement right now with the IDA or projects that usually by market. And we do have a local workforce utilization policy that requires them to draw from 80% of the workforce within our region. So I just wanted to provide that clarity.
And to your point, you know, I of course am well versed in the housing needs assessment that the county has. And agreed, it was done in 22, but the data was from earlier, pre-2022. And how many market rate luxury apartments have come online in Dutchess County since then? There's been a significant amount if you look at, you know, Eastdale and other properties, and also things already in queue that haven't been built but have gone through the process. If you look at that as compared to the amount of affordable senior veteran workforce housing, you cannot tell me that they are in line.
Oh, and I didn't.
Right,
they're
but
across the
but
board.
again, to my point of being, why are we, you know, to give a pilot, I just have the question as a board, not as the project, why are we not negotiating in workforce housing, senior veteran housing? These are market rate luxury apartments. You know, what is it, 56 units?
Yeah.
So, you know, 10% gives us 6 more units in the county that we don't have.
I feel very uncomfortable being involved in the conversation again because I have a firewall between the two.
I
But I
understand.
just want to be clear.
Right.
We are working on a policy,
Yes.
according to
Right.
Sarah.
Yes.
I'm on the policy committee that we're trying to get to the goal line regarding affordable units. Many of the previous apartment benefits that we gave had a certain amount dedicated, maybe 10% to affordable.
And they probably also had a commercial component.
Well, the last one I think we did was Hyde Park. We did one up in Hyde Park with I think the O'Neill.
Right, North
group.
Cross.
Right, right. And they had it for their firemen,
Mhm.
local police force,
Mhm.
and that was their affordable component, which I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
The largest thing I feel uncomfortable here is in almost every project we've ever done since I've been around the last 6 or 7 years is that the town government has supported the project. And here, if you read the minutes, you have the mayor, Kathleen Martin, completely opposed to the pilot. I don't know if you want to address that. That's significant to me. And I don't think it's the zoning or the planning. I mean, I think the project's great, 56 units. It's in one of the most desirable locations in the Hudson Valley or Dutchess County. It's walkable and it's commutable. You know, you got 84 and you got the Beacon train station. So I don't understand, you know, she mentions 2,200 residents. This would bring in almost 200 residents or, you know, I think there was 26 two bedrooms and 31 bedrooms, you know, 170 people, which is almost close to 10%. And that they're, you know, it would put some stress on the infrastructure. You can discuss that.
So I think as far as the stress on the infrastructure, a lot of that was analyzed as part of the seeker review process. And so there were assertions that the traffic was going to increase. There is an existing traffic issue, obviously, in the Village of Fishkill. But to your point, these are much needed apartments that can create a walkability component, you know, right into the Village of Fishkill. And so I was actually involved in the project across the street that was built several years ago. There's an apartment complex right on Jackson, behind the bank. And I think there was a lot of similar issues that were raised, and it's such a lovely facility, and even many of the members of the Village of Fishkill say just integrated well.
But no pilot.
That one didn't have a pilot. It was a different economy,
No, I understand.
definitely different economic conditions at the time. So the village recognizes that they have an issue with traffic in that particular area. But as far as the other stresses, you know, the infrastructure, water, sewer, storm, you know, there was certainly participation from the heads of the departments. I think traffic was the sole issue. Again, the point is that the attempt is to try to create market rate apartments that can create a walkable community. So you don't have people that are driving in and out, and these people support the local restaurants and shops.
We're also involved with some improvements with the DOT to make it safer at intersections. So there's going to be new controls there. I think the other piece about the government, which is interesting, is that we've owned this parcel for a long time, and the mayor led a task force that changed the zoning right before we started our effort here. And so the zoning at that point in time, they could have brought up the 10% set aside or something like that. But they changed the requirements and what was allowed on the block, particularly where we are. And we had no involvement with that. One of the things though is that we built the project 100%, didn't ask for anything. It was based upon newly created, zoning mandates there. And so we made it a point to honor that. We actually had, and it's funny because, you know, we've talked about this in other fronts, is that you can do, the world is so complicated that you can do better projects, but sometimes you avoid that because the requirements are, you know, are so complex in terms of zoning, more variances and things like that. In this particular case, I think there was other opportunities here. But at a certain point, you just want to be transactional. Everything is so expensive and hard to do. And since we've been in front of you before, you know, what we're seeing in the world right now, everything is really that much more complicated. There's also, and I won't get too far into it because this is such an interesting, complicated issue. Something you're bringing up is that in some ways, you just want to create as much housing as you can of good quality, because that ultimately creates a different metric in supply and demand. And so in some ways, just even if you're building at the top of the market, it creates more opportunity on the C and D level of apartments. So at some point, the idea of doing workforce housing, which is really the hole in the market here, there's very few financial mechanisms. And that's one of the reasons that doesn't happen, doesn't get built, because those mechanisms, the capital stacks, all that stuff, don't play out. So you're absolutely right. That's what is the need here, and we have to figure that out. And going forward, more and more you're seeing the town of Poughkeepsie is working on changing their regulations so that there is a 10% or something like that set aside there. So there is good thinking in that regard.
Now, it has been our practice all along despite the fact that we actually have a right to make decisions within our IDA structure independent of local authorities, but it's been our practice to receive support from them, be it the school district or the towns or the villages. So this would be a break from that practice. As I said, despite the fact that we are able to do so, it's not our normal practice. And so I would like to delve into that a little deeper because, you know, we have not had an update since from the mayor since that time. But perhaps you've had some interactions and something to add to that position of the mayor's.
There hasn't been interaction since the public hearing. I think that our hope is that the IDA recognizes the economic challenges of trying to build this project, even if there was an affordable component to it. It's extremely aggressive as far as the financing. Since we completed the applications, obviously the pro forma has changed in a way. So we know that when we go out and bid this, we're going to see significant increases in lumber and steel and so forth. Not necessarily because of the tariffs, but also because of the tariffs. Again, I think what Steve is saying is that this project was created as a right. It met the criteria of the village. It was exactly what the village zoned the project for. So this project came in immediately after the zoning was initiated and determined by the governance, by the village board. So that's all we can offer.
So as it stands now, you're permitted to go ahead. However, you're in front of us for the benefits that we can offer. And
sorry, I think I think it's telling that if this project sits, obviously we've all driven past this parcel forever and wondered why it's not developed. So if this parcel sits, it's going to generate $438,000 in taxes. If this project is approved, we're talking about the economic stimulators. That's the key here. I don't need to preach to you. I know you know what you're talking about, but we're talking about additional jobs. Obviously, construction jobs in my world, your world, you understand this, are so critical to the economy. Keeping people off the bench and keeping people busy. We're talking about the generation of $2.5 million in taxes if this project is built. And that's a significant investment into the economy. The deviation, the IDA support would result in foregone revenue of $780,000. but we're gonna generate 2.5 million in taxes.
You're basing all this on 10 years, right?
Correct.
Because I'm trying to come up with, I see the current property tax bill is 39,347. So times 10 is
Correct.
roughly 400,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I have, the project is fantastic. It looks fantastic. But we keep hearing fair market value housing. Okay. And this agency has created jobs for, let's say, Amazon, 500 new jobs. I don't think this fair market housing, that's more workforce housing, and it won't pertain to them. I think it's gonna pertain to more of the Westchester type people moving to a lesser rent.
But what, I just have to ask the question, why do we, I mean, really, the fact of the matter is that we're creating jobs and we're creating housing for people. in
You're
this
creating
community.
jobs on this project.
Sure,
I mean, the construction jobs, yeah, but 2.5 FTEs
Well, you
is
have,
an extra cashier at Shopper.
well, no, but you have, I mean, that's a technical answer to the application.
Right.
We're also having landscapers and snow plowers.
No, that's more service oriented. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
It just comes down to the fair market value and giving up, let's say this project is completed in 2 years. The rents are then have gone up by 10%. The rents go up by 10%. Let's just say $154,000 of the first year's pilot exemption or reduction. You divide that by 56, that's $2,750 per unit divided by 12, it's $229 a month. So if you can possibly, in 2 years, the average rents in that area go up 10%, you've covered what you're looking for as far as the pilot. Now, I know that the interest rates aren't favorable, and I know that building materials aren't. But we've had during COVID, we've had a lot of contractors come back and get increased sales tax exemptions because of the cost of material. And I'm all for the sales tax exemption. I'm all for the mortgage recording tax exemption. The biggest problem I have is with a pilot on a fair market value housing project in Fishkill. If this was in a more isolated area, but again, this is one of the most popular areas in Dutchess County. So that's just how I feel.
I couldn't agree more. Again, I'm pro mortgage tax and sales tax exemption.
Which is $1 million.
Correct, it's not, and, to speak to, Ms. Leibow's the pilot's not significant. It was said here today, so it's not significant. Let's give the mortgage tax and the sales tax exemption, which is not insignificant. And, without the job creation, and without the affordable component, I'm gonna have a hard time, approving the pilot.
Agreed.
What I would like to make a request, if I may. You're bringing up some issues here that I think we have some thoughtful answers, and there's I think a different presentation that we need to make on the things that you're talking about. So I would request, if I may, that we table this vote until.
I'll make a motion to table the vote. Do we need a motion to
I
table?
think that would be.
I'll second.
All right, just
Okay.
take a.
Okay, so I will make a motion to table our discussion for, was it final resolution?
And maybe we can do it in a month's time.
Are we tabling to a date certain, or are we
Yeah.
tabling
No,
things
well,
in the future?
we'll do 1
How
month.
much time do you
I think if we just defer to the
think? To the
next
next
one.
meeting?
Yep.
Okay. So let's defer this discussion. I'll make a motion to defer this, to keep the discussion open until the next meeting.
I would just.
I'll second.
Yeah, wait.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, any comments is fine.
No, and I appreciate the willingness, because the conversation is very complex. And I don't necessarily, and I'd love to have an opportunity to chat with you, because I don't see rents going up 10%. As a matter of fact, I can actually begin to see that we might actually have a carve back in that, just because of so many things that are going on today. But what new housing is doing here is keeping people in our community. There's a lot of people, and these apartments, as we talked about in our earlier presentation, are larger than what has normally been built, so that they can be, a transition from owning a home and getting older, and such. And I was the beneficiary of this board's action for part of what we're gonna talk about later on is in Van Wagner Place. And we have rents on different levels there. And what's wonderful is the diversity of people that live in that neighborhood. And that project wouldn't have happened without the pilot. You know, and because these projects are tougher today to do than they've ever been. And I would actually, love to make an argument saying that all projects should get a pilot. Because because then we have more and more projects built and supply and demand would really change what happens to how expensive apartments are. And it would make other things more affordable. So I'd love the opportunity to chat more and and present this business.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's a motion on the table,
Second.
so, which has been seconded. And, so any comments on that motion, just alone on that motion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on the motion, which is to table. You take the roll.
James McComb,
Approved.
Ron McComb, Adrian Houston.
Yes.
Approved. Okay, very
Okay,
good.
thank you. We'll see you in a
Yes,
month.
everything you can get us, fantastic.
Thank you.
And we'll see you shortly.
Okay.
I don't have the worksheets that they always send it to you. Attaching my packet, I don't have the worksheet. Yes. Oh, that- we didn't need this. For any of them? No.
Yeah, it's usually when it's a new application
Okay.
and a preliminary resolution, and these are either amendments or.
Okay, got it.
Well, there's no club.
Okay, so. You need to call Tim back in.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean.
Okay.
But I do.
No, I think you can, let's see, yes.
So, since the screen is there, maybe there's.
Sure,
And,
yeah,
the same-
come on in.
I was taking it back, not gonna lie.
We're gonna stay down here. Okay. So, okay. All right. Okay, next item on the agenda is for consideration and approval of an authorizing resolution for T-Rex Hyde Park Owners LLC. Let's see, who would like to comment on that and why they're before us? Jane or Ron or somebody? Does anybody want to tee this off, or do you want to just?
Yeah, this is just a portion of, phase 2 of the T-Rex, project, Bellfield. And they're asking for an amendment to the pilot to extend it, the duration of the pilot, to assist them for this kind of house.
Okay, and municipality has not had any objection to this amendment?
No, we're told that well, there was a public hearing, no one showed up for public hearing, and the supervisor, deputy supervisor, and one of the board members there, they did not have any objection. I was told that they had formally supported it. I haven't seen it, I don't know if anybody else has, but I think the applicants can address that issue.
Sure. Okay, so we have with us, want to introduce you?
Yeah, Larry Boudreau with T-Rex and
Jared O'Connor. Okay.
and is anybody from the team on the Zoom?
Thomas Mulroy, Larry Pelletier, and I think Steve Ross as well.
Okay, technical issues. Okay, are they, I just like to know if they're on it.
We did see.
That was Thomas and Steve.
So we want to unmute them.
Steve
correct?
Rossi, Larry Pelletier.
Right, we want
They don't currently appear in the
to, they don't.
Okay.
Okay, so I did call the supervisor yesterday, Al Torgiani, and said he did send in a letter. I said, can I get a copy of it? he referred me to his secretary, late last night, so I don't have it yet, but he, you know, he assured me that they're in full support of it.
And we have not received anything from them to the negative, so I would assume that we're okay there. So you want to just briefly talk about, it sounds like Tom is, you know, we've had some technical difficulties.
Okay,
and I
okay, that's
apologize.
fine. Yeah,
Would you
I'll-
like to just make some comments?
Yeah, I'll run through a broad, summary of where we're at and prepare
Okay.
to answer. As you know, we submitted, I generally do this because it helps me chronologically in my mind, but we submitted the application in December. Jared and I and the team appeared January 8th. We presented the project. Again, this is for, just the 344 residential units as part of the mixed-use project with phase 2. Nothing else is included in this 20 to 30 year increase other than the residential side of the project. So after that meeting, Camoin was engaged, and they did an analysis. We went back and forth with some questions that they had through Sarah, and their final report came out, and they confirmed their assumptions were within the market norms, and that they determined that the assistance is necessary as requested application for the project. That was in late January, early February. February and March, we reached out to the town and the school board, heard back from the town. The school board is kind of mute on it, but they supported the project previously. So April 7th, we had the public hearing, as Don mentioned, and the public hearing, you know, the build-up Jared was there, I was not there, and then we're here today to.
So the significant change from what it was before to now is?
Going from 20 to 30 year pilot, or again, just the residential portion of the phase 2 project.
Yes. Well, in the documentation, you have in addition 175,000 square feet of mixed commercial, 10,000 of building and sales.
Yeah, that's all.
That's all the
Yes,
same
that's all the same.
from the Schreier's master leases.
It's carried forward, so
Yes,
the
absolutely.
changes.
Absolutely.
But so they're going from 20 to 30 as well?
No.
No.
Oh,
I think
No,
that
Chairman, didn't we have a National Housing Development Corp up here at the last meeting with us that was building out, and we changed the site plan for phase 2 to condense the
We did.
units together?
We did.
Just to summarize?
Yeah.
Okay, so then this
we
is,
did. We presented that.
right, so just in making everybody aware, this was redrawing to a
Yes.
more dense location possibly.
Yes.
And constructing how many units that were rentals?
344. Yeah, the 344 doesn't change.
So the
Right.
344 is what we're looking for on the deviated pilot from the standard pilot.
Yeah.
And it's rental units. He called it residential, but
Right.
it is rental, not.
They're rental units.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were working with a national partner.
Yes.
That was gonna come in
Yes.
to help build.
Yes. Correct. And they were on the last meeting.
Right. Now, that made a lot of
Thank you
sense.
for clarifying. So for this particular part, the request is to extend the pilot from 20 to 30 years for economic reasons.
I just want to clarify one point. It said that there were no objections, however, there were 2 letters.
No, yes, there were
I
written
wanna make
comments.
sure that the record's clear
Yes,
on that.
that's true. So there was nobody attended, but two parties did submit written comments, which we were all provided. Okay, any other questions?
I would just say, because we have a new board member who
Right.
hasn't seen the project at all. Maybe we wanna just revisit what it was and what the change is, in the sense that there was some commercial underneath.
Sure.
Residential on top, and now that's gone away, just like a really high level brief
Sure.
overview.
Sure.
I think if, because you're asking someone to vote on it, they should have.
Yeah. No,
And the
for
entire
sure.
master plan. And what the
Yeah,
units you're
yeah,
getting
so-
at investment.
So the original site plan had 6 apartment buildings with a podium deck, so garage parking and 3 stories above. And then the lofts were along the main street retail. And so they made up 120. So what we did was we consolidated 6 buildings into one building. And we took the loft rentals that were above Main Street off and put that with we combined all the units together, as you know, that makes up the balance of the 344 in one project. The reason why is we had difficulty, the retail development partners did not want to have resi above, and the residential partners didn't want to have commercial below. That transition between those two is difficult to manage. But we consolidated into one building. It makes the site plan much easier to work with because you're pulling all that impervious surface, consolidating it into one building. The parking is easier to manage. The amenities are easier to manage. Previously, we've had like building 6 was way out. They had to walk all the way south to get to the pool. Everything consolidated now into.
And I think just to kind of also round it up for the overall project for Belfield, this 344 acre site. We're not developing all of it. We're developing about 50% of it, 60% of it of land, but it's multi-phases, so it's going to take place over several years. The first phase was the first hotel in Belfield, which is done. We also added the wastewater treatment plant, which has the ability to treat up to 342,000 gallons per day. The second phase, which is what we're before here today, is related to what is called the village neighborhood. So that's the 344 rentals, as well as 172,000 square feet of commercial, and I think we have another 130,000 square feet of institutional space. And then beyond that, which is kind of hinges on the success of phase 2, is the future residential phases and the second hotel. So that's phases 3 through 5. Phase 3, we have 199 residential units, which is approximately 160 townhomes, 24 cottages, and 15 estates. Phase 4 would be a combination of the second hotel, which is up to another 300 rooms, 32 villas, a spa, and event barn. And then we'd add another 246 residential units. So that would be 72 patio homes, 30 cottages, 15 estates, and 129 condos. And then the last piece, or this piece could kind of go whenever someone shows the interest, is the northwest corner of the site, which would be approximately another 129,000 square feet of commercial space. So phase 2 is kind of the core of everything that builds out around it.
And again, it's a mixed use, mixed residence.
But the pilot extension is just for the residential.
Correct.
Just for the
Phase 2.
344 units,
Of phase 2.
Yeah,
not for the residential.
The
Right,
20 year,
just the residential component of phase 2.
yes,
Correct.
the 20 year remains.
Right.
The rentals, right, the multi-family.
So I understand that we're extending the time because to sort of match the financing component of 30 years, way understandable. And I remember at the last meeting, you presenting that the dollar difference is not considerable,
right,
as you estimated.
Yeah.
But my objection to the pilot table is that in a normal pilot, you're sort of front load the high exemptions, and there's a pretty steady linear, almost linear regression down to 0, 50-50, the regular 10-year. And the 20-year didn't exactly mirror that, but I see an even greater push of high exemptions to the latter years than we had before. I recognize the need to accomplish some kind of stability of tax rate of taxable costs so that you can proceed with your project. But I'm not sure that. To me, there are two issues being asked. Yeah, you're asking for an extension of time, but you're also asking for an extension or an addition of the amount of money that we're granting
Benefits.
as a benefit. And so I wish that you had been able to had put in a request to Sarah to see if there was a possibility of changing that, and I don't know, can you address that?
Sure. So feedback we did get from Sarah was a question on extending the 20-year benefits over years. And we provided a response to that, kind of looking at it from two lenses. One being from a nominal basis, if you just took your 20-year pilot and then stretched it out over 30 years. On a net present value basis, you would result in lower benefits to the product overall. So investors would look at that and just tell us, well, that's a worse deal than what you already had. So that wouldn't, from a nominal basis perspective, be attractive. And then if you try to do it, if you try to calculate the net present value, based on some core assumptions to hold it the same, what you're effectively doing is lowering the real benefits realized on the earlier years and the middle years to offset some of the back to make that math work out. And then we're kind of in a discussion then with short, medium-term investors, long-term investors, and we're not sure that that's going to go through either in terms of the appetite. So the schedule that is in front of you, the extension of the 75 and the 65 is meant to help the long-term investors exit at the rates that they would have under the 20-year, while allowing the next buyer to then participate in that, so that they're not hitting what we refer to as a tax cliff on their exit strategies or on their exit opportunity.
I'm sorry, so actually you are splitting it up. You're doing a 20-year investor and then another 10. Whereas I thought that you were trying to sell this as a 30-year investment. I'm not sure I understand.
So the long-term investor in this project might do, say, a 15-year hold, and the next person who comes behind them will likely have a 10-year outlook horizon. So during that 10-year outlook horizon, they're going to be faced with this 20-year tax cliff, as we call it, right, where the pilot stops. That is a negotiation then between that developer and the next future buyer, where it's going to impact the exit valuation. And so just given what we're facing in the market between the high interest rates, the inflationary pressures on labor and building costs, the new tariffs that we're all familiar with now, and our non-core market location, we're having trouble attracting the investors because the non-core market puts additional risk on the exit. So everyone's kind of focusing on how do I get out of this, and they don't want to. They're looking at this tax schedule as a potential hindrance on their exit as it's currently structured.
When you say non-core, can you define that a little bit?
Sure. So core markets might differ depending on what space you're looking at, whether you're looking at office or retail or something like that. But feedback we're getting is that developers in markets like Boston, Charlotte, some markets in Westchester, they're cutting deals with their investors trying to make deals happen, and so they're hitting their investors are getting certain return thresholds when they're looking to invest in those projects. We are competing on a return side. We're getting like good returns, but we have a higher risk because we're considered a non-core market. So we don't have as much vehicle traffic, as much foot traffic, we don't have as much density. Our proximity to the city is a little bit further out than what is considered attractive to some investors or comfortable for some investors. So that would put us in kind of a non-core market compared to something like Westchester in the local comparison.
We did have the third-party Des Moines associate study, which the outcome of that study did say that even with this new tax schedule, it was a reasonable expectations of return. So I just wanted to mention that.
I touched on that in.
So what type of financing are we talking? We're not talking about a typical go to the bank and request a loan. You keep mentioning investors, and so they're more institutionalized.
Yes, for a project this size, it would require institutional investors, and that's the feedback we're getting from this market.
In phase two, what's the money that we're looking for? Your project?
The total project size is 180 million, is what is estimated.
Yeah. Okay.
Other questions? Okay, would anybody be willing to make a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Second. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Jasmine, would you please take the roll call vote?
Sure. No.
Matthew Bowden, approved.
Here.
Approved.
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 And
Approved. Approved. Okay, so the motion has passed. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Sorry to hear of progress. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a resolution for Bill Parcel 4, and again, I have stated earlier that I have a conflict with this, as the firm I'm the chair of the board of does insurance matters for this owner, so I'm going to step out, and Mark.
And I'm gonna step out as well.
Okay. Right, and we still have a quorum. Let me see if there's.
What's that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're good? Okay, let me see if there's anybody here on this.
Same.
Yeah.
He was saying.
We
Oh, he
do,
was coming in.
we do the engineering for his partner at that.
Welcome back.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Don, would you mind doing this out?
I'm happy to do
Oh,
so, if you don't mind.
excellent.
So this one is just for those who aren't aware, so the Van Wagner Place project, it was built parcel 3, built parcel 4. We did an amendment 2 years ago to carve out built parcel 6. And now they're ready to carve out another section for built parcel 7. So this is just an assignment of a portion of the existing built parcel 4 project. It's one building, and Steve can give you more details on that, but it's really to just assign over existing benefits to this other entity that's also going to be controlled by Mr. Kinkle.
Thank you. You'd like to give us some more detail and.
Well, sure, and thank you. So much of what when I first started working with you here 10 years ago, or whenever that was, you had no idea where the neighborhood was going to go, and so we built in some flexibility in some of the language there, but it turned out that some of the units which we thought was going to go on one side of the road, the other side of the road, and it just evolved, and it's kind of a cool thing in that you just learn. Sometimes you make decisions that are teaching moments, and then you do other things. So what, and thank you for that introduction there. I do have some maps if you want to see some, send them on to the. The action is really quite simple. It's just essentially, as part of the project that was known as VP4, we built 22 new units that had a commercial component underneath one of the buildings. And there was a single family residence next to on an adjacent piece of property that called 45 Springside Avenue, and we put a commercial space underneath it and then residential space on the second floor. So well, one of the things that evolved over time, as you can see on the top sheet here, there's two red shapes. The one that there's a larger shape, and then there's kind of a, I don't know what that, but that's where the building is. And again, it's a one apartment with a commercial space underneath it. We bought the second piece a few years ago, and that it's a smaller piece that also has a small residence on it. And one of the reasons we bought it was an opportunity to clean up something that needs to be cleaned up in the neighborhood, but it also gave us access to the back of this parcel here, which there was no ability to get to because of topography, where structures were and such. So lo and behold, we came with an idea of building another building on that site, which we have gotten approved by the town of Poughkeepsie. And so part of transferring the ownership is working on future plans for building that project and refinancing it and working either with the IDA or not. You'll be pleased to know on that project that we're in the process of working with Rebecca Edwards, the town supervisor, to provide workforce housing as part of that project. And you know, again, she asked for a 10% set aside, which is part of where they're going. And Ron, one of the things, if I could mention, is where government puts in that requirement of the 10%, let's say, right from the jump. As a designer, you start beginning to make sure you're designing your projects so that they all work. And one of the things that we did with this project here is, we understood that we were going to need a component. And the other commitment that we made is that all the units are the same. So whether you're paying on for the workforce piece or not, you're not treated different. So anyway, I got off the small detail here. So part of this is just setting this up for different ownership, and we may or may not have a project that we're going to end up building there, but it doesn't, we're not asking for anything from the idea other than to change it from a built parcel 4 to built parcel 7, and I'm the sole member of both of those entities. So your security is the same, and the bank has already agreed to this as well.
Good.
So built parcel 7 is actually lot 6, right? And is lot 7 constructed?
Lot
7 down on Spring side. I mean, because it's getting confused with all the different projects.
Yeah, that was my goal.
Yeah.
Well done.
Because I know we finished with the pool
Yes.
last year, I believe, or a year before at this point,
So we finished that project.
which was lot 3.
3 and 4.
Yes, so lot 3, your eyes are good. So lot 3 is the 5-story building.
So right across the street, going between 6 and 3 is that other building, lot 7. It says existing building,
Yes.
1,300 square feet. So that's already constructed, obviously, right?
Yes.
And that is,
That's a single family residence.
okay, is that part of your portfolio here?
So it is. So
Okay.
my apologies for not putting a red boundary on that.
Okay,
But you can see we have a driveway going.
right.
And so that's the plan for this new building. Every building that we purchase wants to be a little different personality. This one's kind of a tree house. It's in a wooded site. Interesting, but again, this whole neighborhood is coming together. If it wasn't for COVID, we'd be farther along, and because critical mass, we begin to see the impact of having this new building in terms of energy and feeling more like a neighborhood. So
So you will own that entire parcel except for, looks like the 3 houses in front of built parcel 7.
Yeah.
Is now or formerly Metlick or something.
yes, and
Okay.
one other great real estate story is the 3 homeowners had worked with us, and they didn't even ask for any, but we needed easements and stuff like that, and they were amazing. And there's also a condo association behind us, and they worked with us too. And it's amazing that it's not always about money. It was just like the idea of us making improvements and changes and stuff like that, and it's a benefit to them. So again, I may be back to you on this project. We're still working through with it. Working through, and we're working with Hudson River Housing for working through an arrangement for the workforce housing. And if it all works out, I will come back, and make a request if it's all approved by the town. But this action would happen anyway because this project moves forward.
One thing I just want to note is, so in other projects where these type of assignments are contemplated on the front end, we'll often include within the lease agreement, prior approval for those assignments without need for public hearing or board consent. But for this one, because it was not known at the time that there would be this type of assignment to a related entity, the written consent of the board is required, and in the past, we would hold public hearings on that. So the resolution before you today is a public hearing resolution to authorize going forward for the public hearing. And then after that occurs, it would then come back to the board with the actual assignment document and an approval for that assignment. So this resolution here is just for the public hearing.
Thank you very much, because that wasn't clear to me.
And a public hearing is just to break it from 3 to 7. Or
4 to 7, yes.
Right, that's it, right.
It's just a matter of allocation of work we have.
Right.
And to a related entity.
Yes, and I just wanted to point out that because we do that on other projects where we do it without further consent, it's because it's built into the initial approvals, and that just hadn't happened here.
Doing it differently. Very good. Well, if somebody would like to make a motion,
I'll make the motion.
Very good.
Approve the resolution.
thank you. In a second,
Second.
Amy?
Thank you, Brian.
Approved.
No?
Approved.
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 Excellent. Steve, good luck. When does the public hearing, when does that happen? And how do you, what do I have to do for that?
We will just find out dates, and then we can get in contact with you about the dates and locations of the hearing.
Thank you very much. We would hope to have this for that, before the next, before the meeting. Thank you.
One nice day.
Thank you
very much. Get the message.
Okay, all right, I wanted to, before we adjourn the meeting, there was an item that came in under communications, and I apologize that I forgot to talk about it. And it had to do with a project, the airport hangar project. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, the POU development, Sky Harbor, matter at the airport. The county is trying to take the lead in the environmental review of that as amended. We received an amendment to just carve out, so there will only be 2 hangars that are involved at this time. There may be something in the future, may not, that depends. So that all came in, and the county did send us, council, the long environmental assessment form, and claiming that they intend to be the lead agency. And of course, they have all the personnel and expertise and consultants that have been working with them. And actually, it's a very fine piece of work that they have done. And so, in order to assist in this matter, there's no way that I would expect that the IDA wants to be a lead agency.
So alternatively, we would have to be the lead
Yeah,
agency.
and so the idea here is simply to, for the county's sake, authorize someone on behalf of the, normally Sarah would do it, but maybe have Jane and you, by voice motion, an oral motion here, to authorize consent to the Dutchess County government acting as lead agency for that particular project.
And I guess to be clear, we've never been the lead agency on a long-term environmental.
Well, only where everything else had already been done, and then we make a determination based upon the documentation that's been gathered here. But here, the whole idea is to have a coordinated review with having everybody's input, but having the proper authorities do this. Typically, we're dealing with planning board approvals, and they take care of it. In this particular case, you have the county government. This is a county government project. They have all the expertise, so it's fairly simple. It's straightforward here. It's just have you authorize them to be lead agency, and you'll be bound by their determination, but we'll be getting all the documentation as they go through it. And frankly, they've done a very thorough job, and That's already been shared with the board, so you have that.
Right, and so since Sarah is no longer here, we need to authorize somebody else.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have.
So either Jane, and I would suggest an oral motion to have either Jane or you as the chairman or Mark as the vice chairman be authorized to consent to the, indicate that the board's consent to the Dutchess County government acting as lead agency on this particular matter.
Okay, so you just sort of set in motion, but is it appropriate for you to restate that?
Well,
in a
yeah,
way?
and so, yeah, just a motion to authorize the chairman, vice chairman, and the chief. And/or the chief financial officer to indicate to the county that the board has approved the Dutchess County government acting as lead agency in the secret review of the POU development Sky Harbor project.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
thank you, Mark. Would somebody be willing to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. By voice vote, I'm just gonna go around and ask each member, is there any conflict on that project, first of all? Okay, Mark?
Approved.
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 And I also approved. So Jasmine, can make note of that. Okay, that takes care of that. Okay, so is there anything else that needs to come before the IDA? Okay, I'd like to adjourn the IDA meeting.